want Him to come and die for us. We didn't even want His salvation. We wanted nothing to do with Him. It would have been an absolute amazing thing of grace if all of us had gotten together in one huge committee and petitioned God to send down His Son to die for us. But when He sent His Son to die for us, we got angry. I mean, think about this. 3, the severity of the death that was suffered. The cross itself was known to be the greatest of all, but a common one. All other crosses combined are a small thing compared to His, for He died under the wrath of God. It is only when these 3 truths are properly understood that Christ's death is properly appraised. Men do not properly appraise Christ's death because they don't understand it, because it's not being preached. It's not enough to say just Jesus died. As a preacher, you must explain. And please, there's nothing wrong with speaking about that Christ suffered. Please, if you make that the epitome of injustice, you can talk about on Easter Sunday is nails of thorns. You do not understand the cross, my friend. It is Christ dying in our law place, bearing our guilt, crushed under the wrath of His own Father. Since the death of Christ is the greatest and truest demonstration of love, it must be that love is its author and the force behind it. It was not human merit or virtue that moved Christ to give Himself so freely, but it was unmerited and unconditional love. Now, if I could go back in all my preaching and change things, and there are things that need to be changed, I would lay down such a dark path, such a dark picture of sinners. I would still do that. I would lay down a high view of God, but I would have finished many of my sermons with a greater cry of the love of God for men. Not only because it is true, not only because I believe it is correct, but also, know this, accusations against us that we speak too hard about man. But those accusations will be erased if after we have done so, we will speak much about the love of God for men to come to Christ. Do that. Do that. Don't make simply preaching against sin your end. Make it the means to an end, to convince men of their need of God, and then assure men of the power of Christ to save. Much of this I learned honestly while I was in Holland, because I saw the right things preached with little of the love of God and the wide open offering of salvation to all those. Open the door wide, because I can assure you, my friend, it is wide. I heard an illustration while I was in Holland that really is really good. And it's Arminianism is a door that has no mansion. Hyper-Calvinism is a mansion that has no door. Be very careful. There are people out there preaching today opening a door wide to nothing. There are others who are preaching a great and glorious salvation, but are not opening the door wide enough. That's the one thing I so appreciate about Charles Spurgeon and many of the men that I've heard ever since I was a little boy. Come, come. Anyone who comes, you will not be cast out. Come, come. Another thing that we must be very careful about, there is a renewed emphasis in preaching repentance and faith, true brokenness, for men to examine themselves. All that is true. At the same time, all of that can be taken extreme. How? don't expect, don't require of a man that he have full-blown, perfect repentance and faith before he can have any assurance. If I were to teach you the doctrine of repentance and faith, go through the biblical definition of repentance and faith in its full-blown, most mature form, I don't think that that would be seen in any of us. So the evidence of salvation, or that God is working in the heart of man, is not that he examines himself and finds a perfect Puritan repentance and a perfect Puritan faith and thus can have some assurance that he's a believer. The evidence that someone is saved is that may be a meager repentance and a meager faith that enters into a sanctification and grows and continues and flourishes fruit. The evidence, more and more, I see that the evidence of genuine conversion, apart from the subjective aspect, know what God's done in my heart, there is this outward evidence of sanctification that is continuous. It may be 4 steps forward and 6 steps back and 5 steps forward, step back, but you will see a gradual growing. Some men will grow so fast in the things of God, and some men grow slower. And some men grow fast in the public that would make you think that they are much more mature than others, when in fact they're not. So you have to be very, very careful. Very careful. Okay, let's take a break for about 10 minutes, then we'll come back in here and we'll start studying another motive for which Christ came, and it was the joy set before Him. And I think a lot from this.